Body Safety Australia acknowledges and pays respects to all traditional custodians and elders of this nation and the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. This podcast was recorded in Naarm on Wurundjeri country of the Kulin Nation, and we acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to the Kids Are Okay, your go-to podcast for making the hard chats easy. I'm Deanne, Carson.
And I'm Lauren French.
And today we are going to delve into the slightly terrifying world of digital photos and consent.
So, photos and consent. I think when we've had conversations with schools, with parents, with teachers, and we talk about consent, everyone goes to the physical touch first, and it's the easiest kind of point to talk about consent, to talk about hugging, to talk about any of that sort of stuff.
Sure, that space of my body is my body, right?
Exactly. So I guess for everyone listening, how does that then track when we talk about someone's image, so an image of someone's body?
And I think this is one of the things that we talk about so frequently when we talk to parents or teachers. You know, you have to start thinking of a person's image as an extension of their body. Mm-hmm. So just in the same way as we ask children for consent to hug them or to give them a high five, we have to start asking children for consent to take their photo.
Which is funny because it sounds like something that's a really controversial idea, yet it's been something we've been talking about for years, and something that even when we go into, like I know when I do work with parents in early childhood, this is already something they're starting to talk about. It's already something that they're reflecting on, because the way that we grew up with photos is so different than what children are growing up with today.
Absolutely. I remember the first time I started talking about this, and there was a person in the group who was pregnant, and we kind of explored the idea of how many photos would be taken of that child before they were a week old. Like if you think about all of the people who love that baby, the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, the family friends, how many photos would be taken of that child before they're a week old, how many would be shared, and then how many would be shared on social media. And the parents said probably the tens of thousands.
Yeah, wow.
So by the time a baby is a week old, they have totally lost control of their image. And yet we kind of go into schools, to primary schools, and we talk about your digital footprint and how careful you have to be about what you post online.
No passwords given out.
Yeah. Without even stopping to honour the fact that these children never owned their digital footprint in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. There is a assumption that we're starting from zero when they get to school and that they're learning about it, but we're in the negative. They've already had years of social media presence, of photos being taken, what they're setting up fundamentally as a foundation for these children is that people take photos without asking.
Yeah.
That people then take those photos and share them with people, and they might meet another adult who goes, oh, you had a great birthday with the dinosaurs and the party, and they're like, I have no idea, you weren't there, how do you know this? And there's no conversation of, well, this image was shared with this amount of people, this is what was done with it.
Yeah.
And it's just all an unknown.
And I think last week we spoke about the law, and the law being a really low bar, because I know when we go into spaces either with young people or with adults and we talk about this, about, morally, ethically, a person's image belonging to them, somebody inevitably will say, but legally, if you're in a public space, anyone can take your photo, or you can take anyone's photo and you can film anyone because legally you're allowed to. And exactly like we were talking about last week, I think we need to rewind this and go, yeah, but what are the ethics?
Because how terrifying is that as an idea? With more and more videos and content coming out of the, some of it is the random acts of kindness, of videoing, giving someone flowers and those sort of things. But there are many points of escalation where there are so many videos and images of people without any form of consent, any form of agreement, and people are using them in online spaces. That alone can be a really frightening idea.
Yeah.
And if you 100% agree that if we just talked about the legal space, we're talking about bare minimum, and we're not actually talking about viewing the people as people.
As people, exactly. And so what I want to talk about now, Lauren, is, well, what do we do in the space where we're talking to teenagers, right? Because I know often we'll be asked to go into schools because there's been an incident where somebody's nudes have been shared across the school. And so you have a young person or a group of young people who are now in this really public, you know, their deepest intimacy, their nude photos are being shared so publicly, and they have completely lost control of the discourse around their body. And so we're asked to go into these spaces to kind of fix it, right?
100%, and often it comes from almost a space of we've got to go in and tell them they shouldn't take the photos, or you know, it's coming from a, you know, a slap on the wrist kind of thing of well, if the photos didn't exist, then actually everything would be fine. And it's coming from that real idea of we need to, you know, it's almost a fear tactic. It's a talk about, you know, they're taking these images that it's, you know, child sexual abuse material, that it's these are the legal steps, these are the this, without that understanding of what's actually happening for the young people in this experience.
Yeah. And I want to stay with that for a little bit, because I, as a parent, and, you know, and having my children as teenagers go through some of these experiences with their friends, I understand fear. I understand the fear that the adults have, and the want to control what young people do to minimise risk for them. But that doesn't actually help the young people, because actually what it does is drive the behaviour underground, and it leads to a lot of victim blaming, because often what we see in these spaces, if there is somebody's nudes doing the rounds, you know, and like I say that kind of flippantly, but that's what happens, you know. There's a nude photo, the young person may have taken it themselves, somebody else may have taken it without their consent, and it's being shared and unshared and unshared and unshared. And often where we go to is we say to that young person, well, why did you do that in the first place? That was really stupid, right? And we don't actually apply the same understanding of consent as we would to somebody's body to their image. So nobody is asking that young person, did you consent to having that photo taken? Did you take that photo of yourself under your own free will, right? Did you consent to having that shared? Because usually the answer is no.
Yeah, and what were the positions of power around them, and what was the influence that was happening, and, you know, to the people asking for the image or demanding the image or taking the image or sharing the image. Like, there's no flip on who's then doing the disseminating. It's the, okay, well, this is an image of you, therefore you are the person that needs to be spoken to.
Yeah. And so really what we're doing is victim blaming in that space. And I know that you have always spoken really strongly against victim blaming, and just going, okay, where are the spaces that we can talk about consent in this place? Where are the spaces where we can look after each other ethically, morally, all of those sorts of things? But I think it's even more pertinent now, because the photo actually doesn't need to exist.
Yeah, exactly. That concept of if you just didn't take the photo, it would all be okay, has completely aged out of relevance to an extent, because you don't have to have taken the photo now. And this was something that was happening, you know, in my later youth, and, you know, has been happening for a while, the Photoshop of images. But it's never been well done. Like, on the whole, it's something that has often been utilised in joking spaces. Not saying that it is, but...
Yeah, it's kind of humorous, right?
Yeah, it's that we put your face on a dinosaur's body, how hilarious. Yeah. Like, it's that, but very obvious Photoshop. What's happening now, particularly with a huge amount of the AI technology that's coming out, the deep fakes that are coming out, you never have had to have taken a nude image for there to be nude images of you. And to the extent that they look completely real, completely like they were taken, and they have the same impact on the victim, on that person, as if they had taken that image themselves, or that image had been coerced or non-consensually taken. So that this idea of, if we're just sitting in a space of, if I tell my young people, or if the young people I'm around just never take the image, we don't have to deal with this problem. I'm really sorry, but that's not true.
Yeah. The conversation's long in the past, right? I just want to rewind a little bit, and I know, and just talk about what that means to make a deep fake. So I know that I could take a photo of you right now and download an app that is on the App Store for children, right? It's not an 18 plus app. I can download an app now. I could find pornography online and superimpose your face not only onto still images but moving images as well, and I could upload that on my social media, and it would probably take me about 90 seconds to do all of that.
Exactly. It's so quick, and this is kind of, I feel, evolved from a lot of what young people, the apps they were using around face tuning and around this idea of perfecting image and filters, and then working off that. And a lot of some of our spaces might think the filters are still the cat faces and the dog tongue and the hilarity of that. But so often now it is just about making an image look like there isn't a filter, looking like nothing was done, but creating this ideal picture. Now that is something that young people have been using for quite a while.
Yeah.
But now it has extended to that space of, I'm going to create brand new images, brand new videos. I'm going to make anyone do anything. There was an imagery not that long ago of the Pope in like a Balenciaga puffer jacket, and everyone and so many people were like, oh, that looks so real. And that's exactly the point. But it was so real. Yeah. Exactly, but AI.
And I think one of the things that I find most frightening as well is that there are free apps that will make deep fakes that are specifically for babies, like for babies' images. And that's terrifying. Absolutely. So, people are creating child sex abuse material of children who have never been harmed physically, and yet their image can exist forever online as if that really happened.
And exactly that, it's the harm may not have been done to that person, but the harm that will happen when those images are found, when that, there is still such a huge amount of harm.
Absolutely.
This isn't a victimless crime. This isn't I've made the material, but no one actually had to, pose, do the thing, therefore it's fine. There are still victims in that story.
Absolutely. So now that we've terrified everyone, Lauren, what do we do? Because I know, so much of what we do is talk about the ethics of photo taking and photo sharing it, and that starts with the adults. So it's saying to the adults, have you asked your child for consent to take their photo? And no, it doesn't matter how cute they are.
Or that Nana's not there and Nana needs to see the first day of school or the birthday or the celebration or whatever it is, because what we're kind of stepping into there, and what I'm sure everyone has been guilty of, because it's kind of the normal thing we've grown up doing, is guilting people into taking the photo.
You mean coercive behaviours?
I do indeed, Deanne. How hilarious is that? But it is. It's that, but we'd be so sad if we don't have this photo. And but they really want to see it. And now we're telling people that even if they are uncomfortable, even if they clearly do not want an image taken, we're telling them, but you kind of still have to.
Yeah. And then we're not asking them about sharing those images as well. And we're not recognising the fact that, if we're talking about young children, that they have no capacity to understand what sharing an image on social media means, like whether you've got 15 followers on Facebook or 500,000 followers on TikTok, as if a 6-year-old can differentiate between those things and can truly consent. And then when we talk about teenagers, it's a whole different world again.
Particularly if you've got teenagers who know that there are photos of them when they are younger up online, and where's the conversation to actually go to our young people and go, there is a photo up on Facebook of you when you're 7, are you comfortable with that photo being up? Actually, what does the process look like to check in with those things, and ask, do they need to come down? I had a really interesting conversation with a parent at a workshop not that long ago, and they were talking about, it's a really, like, we're trying to work out, because they've got a 3-year-old, and they're trying to work out, well, we've got photos of them in the bath, and we've got these sort of photos. We're not putting them up on social media, but even then, they might not want those photos in an album that anyone in the house can flip through.
Yeah.
It's like, what a great thought.
Yeah.
Because we're actually thinking of the child and the young person as a person who has thoughts and ideas and feelings and autonomy.
Yeah, of their own, and which evolves over time. And I know that I've spoken to a lot of parents who say, my teenager or my pubescent child, right, that 10 to 14, 15 age group, just won't let us take any photos of them at the moment. They're like super self-conscious about their body or their teeth, but I think they're beautiful, right? And of course their children are beautiful. But this is a really, really crucial time as a parent to be letting the child know that they have agency over their image, because it overlaps that same pubescent time where their peers might be taking, photos or videos as a joke, but using it to mock them in online spaces. And so I think probably the most powerful time for adults to sort of step back and respect, a child's agency is in that time where the child is being really self-conscious about themselves and about their image.
Yeah, we're talking about, having it led by the child, having it, putting it back on that child and having open conversations with it, and not having to impose what we might think is the best way for that person to feel better or feel confident or move forward.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about how parents can model good practice around photo taking, photo sharing and consent. How then can adults talk to young people about their responsibility?
So I think when we talk about young people, we need to talk about the habits with taking photos and sharing photos and what has been normalised.
Yep.
And, to be really clear, in the non-sexual instances, before we start talking about nudes and sharing nudes, like, we've got to talk about what does sharing images look like at 10 between friends. Because, when you have those conversations where you come to not the law but the ethics and the values, and we talk about, when you ask young people, is it okay to Photoshop your mate's head on a naked body and send it around for a laugh? It's really curious to see the reactions that come from that, because you'll have some people who will go, no, that's not okay, because they're sitting in a real space of black, white, legal, non-legal, consent, no. And you've got others that go, yeah, but it's a joke. Like, that's totally fine. The people who maybe are consuming a lot of the videos of filming people out on the street and that sort of thing, and their normalisation of, you do just take photos and videos and send them everywhere, and that's completely okay.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think that the conversations that we need to have need to start early, need to start with non-sexual content, and we really need to be talking about those ethics. So at what point is it okay to take photos? But also I think one of the really important parts in this is being a bystander or being an upstander. So when you see people, just doing it for the laughs, whether it's filming somebody at the train station who's fallen over and their bag's spilled over and isn't that hilarious, I want to post that. It's the space of the other people going, mate, that's not cool. Don't do that. Yeah. So that when we do get to the space where some people are coercing others for nudes, or perhaps they've got consensual nudes but there's been a breakup and there's a lot of hurt involved and there's revenge posting or sharing, we've got other young people in that space going, that's not cool, don't do that, delete it,
And to be really clear with when you're doing this work with young people around upstanding, around, standing up in the moment, around that sort of thing, you can't have that conversation without talking about safety and without continuing the conversation of power. Because
Correct.
if you're telling a 10-year-old, you must always be an upstander in these situations, but it's a situation with a 15-year-old, you know, we've got to talk about power, influence. You've got to talk about, is that 10-year-old in a position to upstand in the way that us as the adult might have told them is the way to upstand? And, you know, because it might not be safe for them in that moment to walk up to that 16-year-old and go, that's not okay, mate, that's not funny. But they might still be other avenues for upstanding that isn't necessarily going to endanger them the way that might be.
And I think that just continues that same conversation. What are the things that young people can solve, and what are the things that you need an adult for? And in the moment, if, you know, there's reasonable power balance, like one of your mates is doing something that really isn't funny, but they think they're funny, you can step in and go, mate, that's not cool. Like, I don't think that that's funny. But in the example that you've given, you know, a much older person or perhaps a group of people targeting a specific person, and you're just one person and you don't hold the power, this is absolutely a moment where they need adults to support them. As long as those adults are going to step in without shaming the person who's already a victim in that space.
I'm very curious, Deanne, on what examples or tips, like, just because I'm very aware when we talk about upstanding for young people, I'd like to also bridge and talk about upstanding for the adults, and like for the parents who are watching family members do this or friends do this, for, you know, teachers and educators who might be seeing these conversations in adult spaces, you know, because it's that, you know, tenuous line of how do you talk to a family member, a friend, about don't take photos of my child without asking, without, you know, and the barriers of the fear of social isolation and rejection from the child and all this kind of stuff.
I think that we're already seeing this conflict in families. I think that we are already seeing people who have done a little learning in this area and have made a decision for their family that we're not going to, you know, put our child's photo in the public domain. And then you have other family members who go, oh yeah, but it's super cute. Oh, but my child's in the photo. Oh, but, and we already see this conflict occurring. And I agree, it's hard. It's hard for adults to be upstanders, but I think it comes back to everything that we do in this space. The adults have to set the example, and whether that's, you know, the setting the example to perhaps an older family member who has a few drinks at a barbecue and starts sexualizing the children, going, oh, you know, you're going to be a heartbreaker when you get older, and, you know, making comments about children's bodies and that sort of stuff. And I know that this story is really familiar to a lot of people. It takes courage to say to that person, it's not okay to talk to my child that way, to talk about my child that way, to look at my child that way, to touch my child that way. This is the boundary. And that absolutely goes to digital technology as well. Acknowledge that it takes courage, but if you're the adult, that's your job.
Yeah, like we're not here to say that it's an easy thing to do, that it's no sweat, that it's no issue. It is hard.
Yeah.
It feels awkward, it feels uncomfortable, it feels, you know, heavy. But exactly that, I don't want the young person to feel those things. And we often, I think a lot of adults might sit in a space of, oh, I'll have that chat privately, one-on-one with the person, away from everyone, because it's less embarrassing for them, and I'll do that separately. So in not putting that burden on young people, I think I see a lot of adults who want to take the person away for this like one-on-one chat, to have it away from people, to not have social shame, to not have embarrassment. We'll make it easier, we'll just have a quick one-on-one chat, or I'll talk to this person later, I'll send them a message. And I'm not saying that's the wrong thing to do at all, but I think there's a potential of missing a really powerful moment of you as the adult stepping up and stepping in for your child, for the young person, in front of them. Because yes, I understand that it is more stigmatizing, there is shame, there is awkwardness, there is all of that with more people around. But the power from a young person perspective of, if you are the child and you are watching your safe person, your adult, stand up for you, actually that adult articulating, I see that you're uncomfortable and not okay, and that's not okay with me. I will step in, I will actually tell that person to stop, and I, as the adult, am going to burden that hard conversation. I'm not going to have it privately so you don't even know it happened and you're sitting in a space of I don't know what's going on. I'm going to be really clear about the fact that I'm standing up, I'm advocating for you and your autonomy.
And I think we speak to so many young people who say that moment that may have happened 5 years ago was the moment that they knew that if anything actually happened, they could trust that grown-up to help them out. When the big things, if they saw the grown-up stepping up for them over the little things, they knew that they could come to that person for the big things.
Yeah, it's the proof, it's the evidence. We can tell a child, you can tell me anything and it's all good 100 times until they see us stepping into a space of I'm going to do the hard thing.
Yep.
I see that it's hard, I see that it's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it so you don't have to.
Yep.
Powerful.
Amazing.
So it's question box time, Deanne.
I love question box.
Oh, me too. So today's question box is something that we get asked all the time from spaces, and it's coming from that place of young people and people who have taken nude images, who may have shared nude images, but nothing's actually gone wrong. There has been no leaking everywhere, there has been no big sharing, but they're sitting in a space of I'm not quite sure I want that image everywhere that I've put it, or that it has gone.
Uh-oh moment.
Yeah,
right.
I've hit send and there's no unsend button, and oh no, what do I do? And it's that exact question, what can they do?
Yeah. And you're right, we do get asked this all of the time. It's like, nothing bad has happened yet. But yeah, I have regret. I want this image back. And when we say to them, like, can you just, no, cannot talk to adults about it, cannot talk to the person I sent it to, but I want something done. And what they don't know is that in Australia we have the eSafety Commissioner, right? And for those who are listening, that's esafety.gov.au. And I think it was a world first that they did this, where they said that if you have an image that you have shared and you don't want out there, you can send it to us and it will be encrypted so nobody's seeing it. Because I know when we say this to teenagers, they go, what? Send it to a government agency, my nude image? I don't think that that's okay, right?
I've been told my whole life, don't share your nudes.
Don't do the thing, right? And they're freaking out inside. Okay, so the image is encrypted and no person actually sees the image, and I think that's a really important part to share with young people. And then what happens is that that image is shared on so many social media sites, and I think it's important to say that it's not all of them, but on many of those spaces it will actually be deleted before anyone sees the image.
And I think this comes to this, myth, but something that young people are definitely taught, which is once it's online, you can never take it down. It is an all or nothing space. It's there and it's there forever. And I think that drives that need of, well, I can't go to anyone, I can't talk to anyone because I've been told don't put it up there. And if I did, well, too bad, so sad. But what we're saying is it's actually not.
It's not too bad, so sad. And I think the other part that I want to and I know that we've talked about this, we have to talk to young people about the fact that adults around them want to help them, not criminalise them. So I think we're still sitting in that space where young people are being told, oh no, you've created child pornography. Oh no, you've shared child pornography. You are going to, be
on the sex offender register.
On the sex offender register for the rest of your life because you are a 14-year-old and you took a photo of your boobs and you sent them to your friend, right? And we have to stop that and say, no, there are ways for us to help you. There are ways for us to support you, and the law is there to support you and not criminalise you.
Which I think is a fascinating and something we could go talk about for hours, which we will not. But the idea in actually talking to young people around the law is, what is it doing to be protective? Rather than just this is the thing that you get smacked on, like, you know, on the wrist when you've done it wrong. Like, this is the law is there to punish. But where's that idea of the law that exists because it's coming from a place of, actually, we were trying to protect people. And so because that conversation isn't happening, and because necessarily the laws aren't always designed in that way, you've got young people who, because of a fear of the getting in trouble, are not help seeking. And it's completely logical. If you were telling people, if you tell me you've done a thing, you're going to have the world fall on you, why would they ever tell anyone?
Yeah. And I think it's complicated by the fact that our laws change state to state, federal to state, and, you know, what is legal in one, or what is not criminal in one area is criminal in another area. So it's really easy for us to fall into this space. But I think regardless of which state we live in, it's really important as adults to go, we want to protect you, and we want you to understand that if harm has been done to you, you haven't broken the law.
Well, I'm never going to take a photo the same way again, and I'm sure no one listening will ever do either. This has been a really great chat. I have loved the spaces we've talked about, with particularly, you know, a huge thing of mine is to remove that victim blaming space, and I think this is still a space we see so much of it. You know, so often we talk about not victim blaming when we talk about sexual assault, when we talk about court cases, but that image taking, there is still so much shame and so much victim blaming happening in those commentary. So I think it's great that we've covered that and talked about it. Everyone go look at the E-Safety Commissioner if you haven't already, to check out all the amazing things we've talked about today and other spaces. We'll have all the links in the podcast description so you can check those out as well. But thank you so much for listening with us today. Next week we're going to be covering even more new exciting things. Who are they? I don't know. But we'll see you next week for them. So thank you so much for listening in. I am Lauren French.
And I'm Deanne Carson.
See you next week. And don't forget, the kids are okay. Thanks for joining us this week and making space for these hard chats. Thanks to our amazing podcast producer, Jade Jones, and our incredible composer of this music and all music you'll hear, Jade Perry. If you want us to answer your question box questions, head to our Instagram at Body Safety Australia and follow the link in our bio.